Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Technical Oversight Committee meeting. I'm going to pause for just a moment while the rest of the members of the public are getting logged into the meeting. So give us just a moment or so until we've got everybody on board. Thank you. And that looks like everybody. So good morning again. Thanks for joining us at the quarterly Technical Oversight Committee meeting. I'm Julie LaRocque, your host and chair of the TOC. We have a few housekeeping items to take care of before we actually get started. So I wanted to go through those. First of all, if the reps could introduce themselves so that the folks listening in could hear your voice, even though we can't see you, that would be great. Why don't we go ahead and start with a special master? He's on the top of my list at the moment.
I am John Barquette. Now you hear my voice.
Thank you so much. What about Ed?
Good morning, Julie. This is Ed Smith, DEP's Office of Water Policy and Ecosystems Restoration. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Lori?
Yes, hi, I'm Lori Miller with Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge.
Donato?
Donato Surratt, Everglades National Park.
And then Dan, last but definitely not least.
Good morning, Dan Crawford, TOC rep for the Corps of Engineers.
Thank you all so much. Are there any other panelists who wish to introduce themselves? I think we've got a couple of folks who are logged in as panelists, but you don't have to introduce yourself if you don't want.
Hi, this is Troy Hill, National Park Service.
Thanks, Troy.
This is Lawrence Glenn with the South Florida Water Management District.
Good morning, Lawrence. Any other panelists that wish to introduce themselves at this point? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. We do have at least one member of the public here in the auditorium, so I thank you for coming. And I did want to remind everybody we're trying to do this hybrid in-person Zoom thing again. And I opine that we shall continue into the future in this manner, but we'll see how things go as we move along. For those of you that are on the phone or using your computer, please don't forget to mute when you're not speaking so that we can avoid feedback. And I think typically when we get the feedback, we pause and remind you again. So please don't worry about that. If you've dialed in as a member of the public, you should be muted, and we will unmute you during the public comment period. And if I see your hand raised and you're somebody that needs to speak up during the meeting, we'll work through that as well. If you wish to speak during the meeting, please raise your hand if possible, because we can't really see each other any other way this morning. And we can call on you. Again, if you're a panelist, you can unmute yourself. If you're not a panelist, we'll have our friendly folks in the back here unmute for you. I'm not seeing, aside from the meeting notes, anything that we're going to vote on today, but typically we would take public comment before big voting items, and we will take comments on everything at the end of the meeting, so please stay tuned for that. Let's see here, what else do we have to go through? We talked about that. If you're having technical difficulties of some sort, you could use the chat feature, but please don't use that for questions and comments because we don't have a good way to record that. That's just for you guys if you're having trouble. And then we will get agenda items for the next meeting, either during the meeting, after the meeting, or within a week or so that we can start getting things ready for our next quarterly meeting. And we'll pick a date for that toward the end of today's meeting. And I just switched over to the web page here on my little laptop screen. So I wanted to let you guys know there's a number of materials posted on the web. Hopefully, if you're logged into the meeting, you actually know that already, but you'll see gotta hold my finger still. Okay. You'll see on the main web page the compliance tables for the Refuge, provisional data for Shark River Slough tracking, as well as Taylor Slough and the coastal basins. Also, there's a few reports and documents. There's the actual settlement agreement report. There's the second quarter QA reports. So remember, we're on a calendar year here. And you know, I said we'd pause if we had feedback. We had some right here in the auditorium. Okay, thank you. So we're briefing through June of 21 today. So you'll see on the webpage the settlement agreement report, the quality assessment report, as well as the data associated with the QA report. So that's an Excel spreadsheet. And then under the meeting materials for today, obviously we've got the agenda and the presentation slides. So, oh, and the draft notes from the last meeting, those are also posted out there. So all that material should be available to you on the web, and you're welcome to peruse that as we go through the meeting. Okay, do I have anybody wanting to modify the agenda for today? I am not seeing or hearing that anyone does, and so we will carry on. The next item is to take a look at the meeting summary from the August meeting, and I would entertain a motion to approve or changes or anything that you guys need to adjust in the meeting notes.
Julie, this is Donato. I had no need for modifications to the notes.
Okay, thank you. Is that like a move to approve that I could get seconded from someone?
I don't want to jump before anybody else might have had some edits that they might have needed. So I was just going to tell you that I had none, and then do the cycle and then say a motion. But Lori just motioned, so I'll second the motion.
All right. Everybody disapprove of the meeting notes?
No, this is Dan Crawford. Lori, I approve as well.
This is Ed Smith. I approve as well also.
All right, great. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. All right, our next agenda item is the actual presentation slides associated with the second quarter settlement agreement report. And we have dueling presenters here, John Madden and Chelsea Q. Chelsea, are you going to present? And then John's here if need be, so come on up.
Okay. Yeah. Good morning, Mr. Bucket, TUC reps. Thank you for having me today to present the second quarter of 2021 settlement agreement report. This update adds 3-month information to total Phosphorus compliance. For the Refuge, we've completed monthly tests for April, May, and June. For Shark River Slough and Taylor Slough and coastal basins, because the compliance is assessed on a water year basis ending in September. So we are still tracking the progress, and here we provide 12-month tracking results ending in June. So starting from the summary table, At the top for the Refuge, the monthly geometric mean TP concentrations for April, May, and June were well below the respective long-term levels. The marsh stages decreased, and we couldn't collect all 14 samples in those months. For Shark River Slough in the middle portion, the results are still provisional because flows for S12s won't be finalized till early next year. So for the 12-month period through June, the flowing mean TP concentration was 0.3 parts per billion higher than the long-term limit. But the percent of samples above 10 parts per billion was still below the guideline. So for Taylor Slough and coastal basins at the bottom, the 12-month flowing mean TP concentration through June was 5.4 parts per billion, about half of the long-term limit fixed at 11 parts per billion. And the percent of samples greater than 10 parts per billion was extremely low at 2%. This slide shows the Refuge monthly compliance status in the past 3 years. So here, the purple stepwise line is for the monthly marsh stages. And this solid red line is for long-term levels, which are inverse to stages. So when the marsh stages was decreasing, the long-term levels were increasing. And those blue dots are for the monthly total phosphorus geometric means of samples we collect in the marsh and need to stay below the red line. So the 3-year average TP geometric mean was 7 parts per billion and also below the 7 parts per billion number expected by the consent decree. And stretching the long-term levels to a zero line, we can see the deviation between long-term levels and the observed data. So for the 3-year period, the average TP geometric mean was 3 parts per billion below the long-term limit, a long-term level. And this red dot indicates a single excursion in September 2020. But it takes 2 excursions within a 12-month period to be considered an exceedance. And since then, our monthly geometry means were consistent below the long-term levels. And I'll show us all the way through October. So I'll show a few more month data on the next slide. With preliminary data outlooks through October, our observed geometric mean TP concentrations were consistent below long-term levels. And therefore, we exited the 12-month period of potential exceedance because of the September 2020 excursion. So basically, October resets the clock for compliance. Moving over to Shark River Slough. With provisional data through June, the 12-month flow weight mean TP concentration was 0.3 parts per billion, and near 2 million acre-feet flow was sent to Shark River Slough, which were extremely high. For historical compliance status, here the solid red line is for long-term limits, and those blue bars are for annual flow weight mean TP concentrations. So in the most recent 2 years, for water year 2019, the second bar from the right, we had a small exceedance. And for water year 2020, the last blue bar, we met the limit by a small amount. So in the next few slides, I will show the daily flow at Shark River through inflow structures over the past 3 years. So compared to previous years, this year, huge releases were sent to Shark River through from October to January. By January 18, the flow achieved 1 million acre feet, which got us the 7.6 parts per billion limit that we need to meet for 2021. And most of these flows pass through S12A, B, C, D, in those light blue shaded areas. And as time progressed, the releases shift from S12 to S333 and S33 North in these dark blue and red areas. So for the 3 quarters in water year 2021, so from fourth quarter of 2020 to first quarter and second quarter of 2021, the flow contribution from S12s reduced from 90% to 50%, then 10%. But S333 and S33 North contribution increased from 5% to 45%, then 85%. This slide shows daily flow discharged into West Shark River through from S12A, B, C, D from top to bottom. Because WC3A had a high stage in October and November, the Army Corps of Engineers implemented emergency deviation, which allowed S12A and B to open, passing the October 1st deadline. So S12A, B passed lots of water, then closed in the first quarter of 2021. And S12D flow was even higher and remained open till May 1st. This slide shows daily flow discharged into Northeast Shark River Slough. So the first 2 panels, S333 and S33 North, were primarily used for releases. So for flow at S356, only those yellow shaded area was counted towards compliance because this traced water coming from water conservation areas and flowed into the park. And this slide stacks all inflows and outflows in the East L29 canal between S333 and S334, and add a red line for S334 flow. So any flow below this red line was not counted towards compliance because it didn't go into park and passed by S334 to South State. So this slide shows the biweekly flows in blue bars and its flow rate mean TP concentration in cyan dots. And this is the data that actually goes into our annual flow rate mean TP concentration for compliance calculation. So the first 5 months in water year 2021, high flows were sent to Shark River Slough with the low TP concentrations. And in the second quarter, flow reduced, TP concentration increased, while as 3A stages decreased. So I'll show the stage plot in a moment. So we add a line of blue diamonds for tracking the 12-month flow rate mean concentration ending at each month. Then the last diamond is the number we're reporting for the second quarter ending in June. And this slide provides more information for understanding the system conditions. So it includes 3A stages, shock river slough inflow, and weekly flow rate mean concentration for water year 2020 and water year 2021. So the second quarter end at this black line with 3 months looking ahead. It actually covers the entire water year 2021 with provisional data. So right before the water year 2021, then combined operational plan, also called COP, began in September 2020. Then in the first 5 months of 2021, 3A stages here shown in this solid royal blue line stayed in zone A. And in zone A, it allowed maximum practical releases. So huge releases shown in this sky blue shaded area was sent to Shock River Slough. Then in early March, this 3A stage fell under the dash royal blue line, entered into zone B. And in zone B, the Miami Trail flow formula took over, which called for continuous releases while stages were low. So also just 10 days after entering into zone B, the S33 headwater shows in this red line fell under 9.2 feet. So historically, when S33 headwater was under 9.2 feet, TP concentrations shown in those yellow dots were high. And this year we saw the same pattern repeated. So in zone B, while stages remained low and high TP concentrations persisted. So for water year 2021 with provisional data, the flow rate mean concentration was 8.2 parts per billion, which put us 0.6 parts per billion above the limit. Actually, this year we had a better water quality than 2020 with 1.1 parts per billion lower. We move on to Taylor Slough and coastal basins. Because compliance is assessed at the water year ending in September. So here we're still tracking the progress and report the 12-month period ending in June. So the flowing mean TP concentration was at 5.4 parts per billion, about a half of long-term limit. So for historical compliance status, the observed levels shown in those blue bars were well below the long-term limit shown in this red line. And the average was for past 5 years was 5.6 parts per billion, and also below the 6 parts per billion expected by the consent decree. So this slide shows daily flow in the past 3 years. So compared to previous years, this year, we sent lots of water to Taylor Slough and coastal basins, mainly through S332D at the bottom, and S18C at the top. And the peak flows in November was as high as 2,500 cubic feet per second. And this slide shows a daily flow at individual structure. So S18C released high flow in November, then quickly decreased because the system was drying up. Then for S332D, the pumping was operated consistently except for 1 month gap from mid-May to mid-June. And G737 and S328 flows were always very low. And this chart shows the fate of water pumped by S332D into the C111 detention area. So whatever flow under this red line was not counted towards compliance because it didn't go into the park, but passed by S332DX1 to the north. And S328 flow in this neon green line is the water carried, it's the surface water carried into Taylor Slough. And this slide shows sampling event flows and in those blue bars, and there are flow weighted mean concentration in cyan dots. So the TP concentrations for this year were consistent below 7 parts per billion, except one spike in November associated with Tropical Storm Eta. Then this slide adds a line of blue diamonds for the 12-month tracking flow mean TP concentration at the end of each month. Then the last diamond is the 5.4 parts per billion number we're reporting for the second quarter ending in June. And this concludes my presentation. I'm ready for questions.
All right. Thanks, Chelsea, so much. Do we have any comments or questions from the reps?
Hey, this is Donato. Chelsea, that was a great presentation. Thank you. Very clear and articulated. Can we go back to slide 14?
Slide 14?
Yes.
Okay.
So this you explained really, really well. So I appreciate that. I do want to put a little more focus on that last part past the solid vertical black line where you say look ahead, and focusing on that red solid line, which represents the headwater for 333 stage. So, and I note you pointed out COP operations began back in 2020. So as a part of those COP operations, some things that we have been considering are adaptive management with respect to operations for the S333 and responses to what's going on up in Conservation Area 3. And so one of those things was that we focused on a stage of 9.2 at the headwater of 333. And we noted that when we're below that line, we tend to see concentrations being elevated above our desired levels, particularly at the headwater of 333 structure. And this year we seem to just hug that line so tightly that we just never really saw our concentrations at the headwater of 333 or even along the western portion west of the S333 structure. We weren't really seeing those concentrations come back down to levels we're accustomed to seeing during this time, and that's kind of evident right before October 2020. You can see all of those solid lines really tight on the 7.6 green line that you have going across as a vertical line. But we're not seeing that happen. We're not merging with that green line here at the end of the year in 2021. So it's kind of concerning because it's setting us up for conditions where we'll be slightly higher going into the next year. The other thing I wanted to point out here with respect to the COP adaptive management concepts is that because of the stages that we're facing right now, in there we have embedded the idea that if in December, the 3-stage average up in conservation area 3 is below 10 feet, then we're gonna have to take other measures with respect to trying to extend the recession in the canal and giving us longer or higher water levels in the canal going through the later portions of the dry season. So just kind of wanted to bring some attention to those things that we'll be having to pay attention to as we go forward. But again, I thought this was a really good, you covered this really well, Chelsea, thank you. See Ed's hand up.
Thanks, Donato. Ed?
Hey, yeah, thanks, Donato. I appreciate it. Can you repeat that last little bit about the 3-gauge average? I wanted to make sure I heard it clearly. My speakers aren't working.
That's probably my fault, mumbling. In the COP adaptive management strategies, one of the things that we identified is to start paying close attention to water levels in the canal, particularly at the headwater of 333 and what's going on up in conservation area 3A. And so when we're looking at the 3A stage average going into December, we're hoping that it's above 10 feet. But when it's below 10 feet, then we need to start figuring out what management actions we're supposed to be taking to try to extend the recession rate that's in the canal, so we'll have a deeper pool of water going through the latter portion of the dry season. So the idea is just to give us a more water in the canal, hopefully keeping our water levels high enough that, you know, once we go back into the wet season, we won't be facing a dry, extremely dry condition that'll be promoting even higher concentrations. Did that make any sense? Over.
Yeah, it made sense. I just wanted to make sure I heard everything because, like I said, my speakers went out for a little bit there, so I missed kind of a big chunk in the middle. I appreciate you repeating it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks to both of you. Any other comments or questions from the reps at this point, or Mr. Barquette?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Chelsea, thank you so much. I echo Donato's comments. Great job. And we are now about to move into the public comment period, so we will do that. If you are logged in as a member of the public or here in person and wish to make a comment, please raise your hand. And I'm going to get over to the attendees list. I see somebody has their hand raised. Why don't we start with Mike Alpenbein? You have comments or questions?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We sure can.
Hi, how are you? Happy Tuesday. I did have a question, and hopefully someone could address it. So I think in the near future, we should have some documentation that further solidifies the idea that there's not any sparrows in the subpopulation A. How would that affect COP moving forward? Would that create any changes in procedure, and what would that look like?
We'll have to take that as your comment and get back to you, Mike. I don't know that we have anybody prepared to answer that here. I think it's a good comment, though. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Pipes, comment?
Hi, Nyla Pipes, One Florida Foundation. Mic check?
We gotcha.
Fantastic. This just seems like a great place to continue to sound the alarm as far as our continued quest to send more and more water south. I know that the stormwater treatment areas are having to be rehabbed on a pretty regular basis these days as a result of sending more water south through the entire system. And with the consent decree that we have to meet, I'm just incredibly concerned. and I want to go on record here as well as, in the LOSM meetings about this idea that we can just fix our problems by continuing to send more water south. I know that we've got a lot of infrastructure that we're putting in place as we move forward, but we really just aren't there yet. And I think that these presentations that show how we are having exceedances are incredibly indicative of that fact. So just wanted to be on record and say I am concerned about sending water south until we have more infrastructure in place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Cook, Newton Cook.
Thank you very much. I listened to this and I see a lot of very positive things. It looks like the water going into the park is in pretty good shape, and we all know the park is well below the 10 parts per billion need. I heard about the deviation. I heard that word, and I think it should be made plain. That deviation was an attempt to try to save what few remnants of animals and wildlife is left in the Central Everglades. I like moving water south, but it's useless to move the water south until we move it all out of the Central Everglades, where it's stacking up and drowning all the animals and ruining the tree islands, and the poor tribe is suffering. So the numbers all look awfully nice. They all look good. But the problem is the water management. The movement of the water is not so good. And I appreciate the fact it's a very difficult task. But until we open that gate at the Tamiami Trail, all the S12s and the 333s and everything else, and drain this water south naturally, just open them up and let them drain, then we're going to have problems all the way back up the system, including Lake Okeechobee, and of course the estuaries. So lots of good news on phosphorus, not so much good news on moving water properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Ed, I see your hand is up. I'm not sure if it's still up or up again.
No, it is up again. Thank you, Julie. I appreciate it. And just wanted to get clarification from Donato. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I'm just looking at my notes and I noticed that you referenced, we, and I wanted to make sure that reference of we in regards to the COP adaptive management plan was in reference to that working group and not the TOCs. That is correct, because I don't have anything in my notes from TOC ever really making decisions on the COP adaptive management plan. Is that my correct understanding, Donato?
Ed, you're 100% correct, and I apologize for not making that clear distinction. Yeah, when I was speaking about the COP adaptive management strategies being implemented, I was speaking about the COP adaptive management team implementing those. And we did have a presentation on some of that a couple of TSD meetings ago, but you're absolutely correct. It's not the members here that are managing that, but some of them participate in that, but there's a specific team for it under the COP adaptive management effort, and that's led by the Corps. Thanks.
I appreciate that. Thanks for that clarification. I thought I was going crazy. So.
Thank you both. Our next comment is from Tom Van Lent. Mr. Van Lent.
Thank you very much. My name is Thomas Van Lent. I represent the Everglades Foundation. I too think that the presentation by Ms. Dr. Koo is really excellent, and just kind of echoing the comments from Dr. Sarah, that the issue does seem to be focused on the 333 structures, 333, 333N, when the connection is primarily related to the canal. So it does seem to be sediment issue at those two structures. You don't see at the S12s, for example. Now, last time there was a great deal of discussion about the investigations, scientific investigations into characterizing those sediments, into investigating the hydrodynamics of those structures. And those ongoing studies are fine, but I would recall our comments from last time in that what we'd like to see is some discussion of the remedial actions. What can be done in the short term, what needs to be done in the long term to address this ongoing issue. It seems to be coming up again and again and again. And while studies are excellent and needed, there does need to be some discussion of remedial actions, either containing the sediment, removing the sediment, capping it, whatever needs to be done. But there needs to be investigations into solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Lent. Do we have any other members of the public who wish to make comments? I'm not seeing any hands raised. I will eventually learn don't talk till the green light turns on, but we'll get there. Okay, great. Thank you all so much. We'll move on to some closing business here. For the reps and Mr. Barquette, the bottom of the agenda shows some dates for our next quarterly meeting. We could hold, I'm looking at January 18th or February 1st. If we could select a date, that would be great. And I'm good for both of those.
This is Donato. January 18th is better for me.
And this is Lori. January 18th is also better for me.
Do we have any objections from Dan or Ed or Mr. Barquette? Can we do the 18th?
No objections.
This is Dan Crawford. No objections.
And I'm fine also.
Okay, well, that was easy, you guys. So January 18th will be our next regular quarterly meeting. So thanks a lot, you guys. I did not personally write down any action items. I see Chris in the back of the room. I'm not sure. Did you? He's shaking his head no. I should alert you folks, we do understand the Corps may have a presentation they want to make at the January meeting. And we are hoping you guys will get your proposed agenda items to us as soon as you can so we can start making some plans for the meeting on January 18th. So other than that, I don't think we have anything else today. I don't see anybody jumping up and down or hands waving and unwaving on the screen here. Oh, here's Ed has a comment. Ed?
Hey, Julie. This Ed Smith, DP. I just wanted to announce to the TOC that we have finally selected our candidate to replace Alyssa Gilhooly, who left us recently. So we do have a new water quality lead with DEP. Her name is Mylin, and I'm going to botch her last name because I haven't learned to pronounce it yet, but Soto Longo, oh goodness, I can't even pronounce it. But anyway, I hope to have her formally introduced soon. I think she's listening in, but I didn't want her to get bogged down in TOC on day 2 of her job here with us at DEP. But we're excited to have her. So long history in water quality analysis, water quality. So we're really excited to have her on board.
Oh, that's really great news. Well, welcome, Mylin. Nice to have you as a team member over there. Anything else, anybody, before we close
Hey, Julie, this is Dan Crawford with the Corps. I guess I just wanted to follow up on your teaser and let the folks on the public and the agency reps know that the topic the Corps was looking to bring to the TOC quarterly meeting in January is the water quality monitoring plan for the new Central Everglades Planning Project S356 Echo pump station, which is a 1,000 CFS pump station that is going to be located just to the east of the existing 356 pump station. Corps is moving out into, we're in intermediate design phase now. We're looking to award a construction contract in about a year, sometime in the first quarter of fiscal year 23. So we just wanted to bring that information to the TOC and have a formal discussion as that design progress continues to proceed. Over.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for letting everyone know, Dan. I appreciate that. Anything else? Ed, your hand's still up. I think it's just still up, though. Anything else from anyone for today? Well, I guess that's a wrap. So thank you all for tuning in and participating here in person. And we will see and or hear from you on the 18th of January. Have a great rest of your day.